Hey, welcome back to the Real Quick with Mike Swick podcast. Today we have Josh Thomson on the show. For those of you that don't know, Josh Thomson was a teammate of mine for many, many years at AKA, and actually still a teammate. Once a teammate, always a teammate. A man that I have spent hours and hours and hours and hours with in the gym training, who's helped me get ready for many of my fights. Someone I've always looked up to and been inspired by. I've always said he's one of the most technical guys we've had on the team at AKA. He went on to win multiple championships under the Strikeforce banner. He has his own podcast, which is doing really good with John McCarthy, called Weighing In, so check that out. And he's a commentator and analyst for Bellator. So let's talk with Josh. What's up, Josh Thomson? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Bro, I tell people this all the time. You and I have been friends for what? Like, we started in what, 98? Was it 98 or 99? Something like that?
Dude, I tried out for the team and met you in 98. And then I came back to the gym in 2000, at AKA in 2001.
Yep.
So it's been 19 years.
I was already in the UFC at the time in 2001. So when you came back, I already got signed by the UFC. That's fucking insane. How old are we? This is ridiculous.
That's 19 years ago, bro. We were training 19 years ago together.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Because from 98 to 2001, you were just kind of like sitting around waiting for me to get back, and then I finally showed up and you were like, yes, Swick showed back up. And then it was like, that didn't happen.
It was just nice, man. We had so much history of that gym from Frank Shamrock, BJ Penn, Dave Velasquez, Kelly Delonte. I don't know if you remember Charles Taylor, Ryan Bowe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's history right there.
I fought Charles Taylor
Ryan Bowe is
on
history,
the damn.
man.
I fought Charles on the tryout. 98.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even realize that it was like the Frank Shamrock team before AKA, and like me, you, and like Bobby and Trevor and and Bob, we all created kind of the AKA team when Frank left. And we just called it Team AKA because, like, that's the only thing that we had, kind of like, But like, people don't know that. People think we started out as, like, AKA and then, like, we were already, like, up there. But it was, like, just a group of guys. We lost our big star, Frank Shamrock. He was gone. You were the biggest star, obviously, fighting in the big shows. And I was just, like, getting there. And there was no Fitch at the time or Koscheck or Kane or DC or any of these guys. Even Luke, I think, at the time. It was just, like, Trevor and Paul Buenatello and Bobby Southworth and you and Bob and Hav, and then we just were like, fuck it, we're just gonna build our own team, dude. And dude, coming from that, so historic and amazing, dude. Collectively, I had a small part of this, but I mean, collectively, we built one of the best teams in the world ever, like period, ever. I argue this point a lot to people that there's no team, I think, in the world that's built more stars and more champions from the ground up, literally from like the ground up, than AK has. And that's not taken away from other teams. I'm just saying we did have the formula down for taking somebody with talent and making them a champion and a star.
Yeah, that's the, like, people talk about, like, oh, well, Greg Jackson. Yeah, but Greg Jackson ended up getting stars at the time. Rashad Evans was already a star before he went there. GSP, when he was training out of there, was already a star at the time. They were just going there to get fine-tuned. Yeah. AKA, they actually built it up from the beginning. Like, I mean, I had some fights before, but it was like all like small shows. I remember fighting in front of like 300-400 people. Yeah. Do you remember? Before the UFC, you and I would go to events. Remember in Idaho?
Yeah.
We would get fights in between, because at the time the UFC only had fights, like 5 or 6 fights a year on pay-per-view. And so you had to make money other ways if you were being a professional fighter. And so I would call up some of my old contacts from my fights up in Idaho, and we'd get fights in Boise. Yeah. And they were actually paying pretty well. I think we were making like $1,000 at the time, and everyone's like, "Oh man, you guys are making so much money." And I'm like, thinking to myself, "Bro, I wouldn't even get out of bed for $1,000 right now." Like, I'm good, man. But it's funny to think that I just remember Crazy Bob a couple times at some of the Boise promotions that we went to. There'd be like, 2,000 people in the arena. Yeah. But we knew what we were making. So, I mean, like at the time, I think I was making like $300 or $3,500. You guys were making like $1,000 or $1,200 or something like that.
I was so happy as fuck too.
And Bob would walk in and be like, he would just walk in behind the desk to the cash register, and he would just hit the cash open drawer, and he would count out our show money. Before the fights even started, he would just grab all the cash, count out our show money, and then he would like put the rest in the register, and they'd be like, "Hey, what the fuck you doing?" He's like, "Making sure my guys get paid."
Yeah, of course.
So, like, you know, and then we would always get our show money, and other promotions or other fighters would not. They ended up getting stiffed.
Yeah.
You know, because the promoter would just take the cash and bounce before the fights would end and be like, "Yeah, fuck it, won't pay him," and then. We always at least got our show money, you know, and that was what was important, I think, at the time for us. And then, you know, for some of us,
show money, like, dude, we won all the time. We got our win money.
Yeah. I mean, majority of the time, like for me, the majority of the time, I got my win money at the time because it was like, hey, those were like my connections for the Boise shows.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool, man. I just remember the history of it all, and we had such a great time building not just help build the team, but it was just. What people don't remember, I don't think what people don't remember or people don't know is that Frank Shamrock's team was this little, it wasn't even his team. AKA wasn't his gym. It was Javier Mendez's gym. Right. Frank had just a small little matted area off to the side that was in AKA, which was Javier's gym. So it was never Frank's gym. It was never Frank's, it was Frank Shamrock's team, but it was like, it was just this little area off to the side that was his. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he was definitely part of building AKA as far as like in terms of name recognition. There's no doubt about it. But it was always Frank Shamrock's fight team at the time. Yeah. And then when he left, you know, we just we're like, you know what, forget it. Let's just call it AKA fight team or just AKA. We're just all fighters from AKA. We never even really thought about giving it a name. It just happened organically.
Yeah, and no disrespect to the other teams like Jackson, Wicklejohn. Like, they're some of the greatest coaches in the business as well. Great gyms, great coaching. But it's just that we had the one thing we had different was we had the ability to build from the ground up. You know what I mean? Like, so we had the great coaching staff and to be able to build champions and to coach champions and to have champions fight under our banner. But just through trial and error, like, you know, those early days like you're talking about where we tried to figure out things and we would, you know, the Airdyne came in with Van Arsdale or whatever. And then we started building a workout around the Airdyne. Yeah. And now it became like a staple of AK, which we still have here at AK Thailand. And it's like we just started working on all these different like curriculums and threw away what didn't work and kept what did work, and it just over time created this award-winning champion making curriculum that like proved to be a success when Kane came in, when DC came in, when Khabib came in, when Fitch and Luke and everybody else. So yeah, man, it's the old days. A lot of people don't know that, you know. A lot of people don't know the history of like where it was back then. And you know, it was like, like you said, like one pay-per-view every 2 months or something like that. Like when I got into UFC, and I got into UFC way later than that, which was 2004, there was still like a pay-per-view once every 2 months. Like it wasn't even like every month. There was like 13 office staff at UFC in 2004.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's like 16 years.
To go back to your argument, though, about us building AK building champions or teams, the only other team that I would consider to have a true comparison to that team is the Miletich fight team. Yeah, because remember they had Tim Sylvia, you know, and this was Matt early Hughes. In the days, so they were just building guys. You know, sure, Matt Hughes came from a wrestling background, but he still had to be built as a fighter, you know. And sure, the game has changed since then, but they had Matt Hughes. They started with Robbie Lawler, so if you want to carry him over into now being a champion and being in all the success that he's had, Pulver. You know, so Matt Hughes, Robbie Lawler, Tim Sylvia, Pat Miletich. I mean, they just had Ben Rothwell, who's still fighting, came from that gym as well. I mean, they just had a plethora of guys that I want to say Mike Whitehead ended up going there, even though he started training up in Idaho with me when he was at North Idaho College Wrestling there. I mean, they had just a plethora of guys that
you're right.
Were phenomenal. I mean, if we're talking building champions, Pat Miletich did a phenomenal job of building champions. Right. You know, Jens Pulver. How the fuck can I forget?
I just said his name. Jeez. Yeah, I was like, how'd you forget about that guy?
What an idiot! How can I forget that guy? Yeah, absolute stud. I mean, we're talking about building champions. I would say that they were probably number one at the time, but over time, you know, AKA has definitely caught them or is in the process of catching them and beating them.
They were the initial best gym at building gyms or building champions, and then it just, you know, they lost a lot of their fighters, and their fighters kind of moved on, some of them, and then AK's just kind of had that just longevity. I mean, to be still having fighters like Khabib at the top and to still have DC at the top, you know, so it's like, I guess that's sort of what I meant. But either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, to be first, second, third is irrelevant. The point is we had a great curriculum and still do. And to be a part of that with you in the beginning was incredible, man, because we were the ones putting the time in, taking the lumps, learning like what to do, what not to do. And that was tough, man. It was tough training. And one thing that we had in common with the Miletich camp, was we trained hard. I mean, it was like the school of hard knocks on both sides. We had to slowly tone it down over the years, but to be the best fighter back then, especially, you had to fight. Like when you're a good basketball player, you play basketball every day. We fought every day, and I think you're very familiar with that. You, from the Frank Shamrock days on, you had some pretty decent sparring sessions.
It's pretty funny when people say, like you just did, you said, yeah, we used to train hard. You mean we used to train stupid?
Yeah,
well, we would sometimes
No, I
would not wear
stupid.
shin guards. Stuff. Yeah,
I was the swicking out training stupid guy.
We sometimes wouldn't wear shin guards. We didn't even start wearing knee pads till later on. Like it became, I think, right around the time that I started throwing more knees, started hurting people during the UFC, like during my UFC first run. It just became this like, Josh, you got to stop kneeing. So then we all had to start wearing knee pads. So knee pads were a mandatory. Shin guards we always wore them, but it was like sometimes guys would only wear them on the leg they kicked with, and it became this big, And then I remember when I first got there, 16-ounce gloves weren't mandatory. It was like we could spar with 12s, 14s. Wow. Some guys would try and spar with, littler guys would try and spar with like 8s and 10s. And then, like, let's do with the MMA gloves. And I was like, that was the one thing I never enjoyed doing was MMA sparring, like that with the MMA gloves.
Yeah.
Always hated it because in that era, it became like, oh, you hit me, I'm gonna fucking hit you back. And it was like, no.
Yeah.
I could just
with us,
just never liked it. Never liked that part of it all. So crazy.
Well, we had to wear the knee pads. I think we broke Fitch's nose like 3 times. Like between breaking his nose like so many times, and then if it wasn't getting his nose broke, he was like having to get super glued, like his cuts. We'd have to go next door to like the whatever it's called. What was it, a 50% off discount store?
It was called Big Lots. It was like a little dollar. It was almost like a really big dollar store.
It's like a dollar store. We'd buy super glue to fucking like glue Fitch's face back together every day. It was fucking crazy.
Yeah. That we had. It's so crazy when I think about all the guys that have actually been through that gym and trained. When I start putting it all together, you got to think we had Forrest Griffin, we had Ben Askren, we had Pat Minahan.
Yep.
We had
Baroni.
We Andre Arlovsky came through. BJ Penn. You had his brothers. Remember his brothers came through. And then you had Sharuto, Niza. I mean, we had so many good jiu-jitsu guys come through that gym when BJ was there. It was just like phenomenal to think that. I mean, Dave Camarillo pretty much came over after he left Hal Gracie's gym directly to AKA.
Yeah.
But a big reason because of it was because of BJ, because BJ and him had a friendly relationship at the time, and they still do. But he was a big leading reason of why Dave came, and it was like even all this stuff, even now that Dave is gone and left and doing his own thing, he's a big reason on why our gym was so successful. Between the combination between him and Javier, not just the fighters, but he helped groom and take the team into like the new era of being well-rounded, from judo, foot sweeps, to, because remember, he was a black belt in judo as well as jiu-jitsu. And from his judo, jiu-jitsu, his foot sweeps, the way he approached the MMA game itself, mixing up with the striking, he was also someone that got in there and sparred with us. And so he could learn better on how to teach it and what worked best for him and his style of how he would teach his jiu-jitsu and judo based around our style of stand-up. Yeah. That was taught to us by Javier. So it was very it worked very well together. And the two of them worked very well together, Javier and Dave.
Yeah.
And for those people at home that don't know, Bob Cook is a huge reason of why this whole thing worked so well together for so long. if not the main reason on why it worked so well together for so long, and then, Bob, you have Javier, and then Dave Camarillo. The three of those guys were just phenomenal coaches, and other coaches came and went, from Weetzie to Lynn. To, I can't even think of other names, but there was other guys that were other coaches that were in there.
Yeah.
But those other coaches came and went, but those three were the steadfast guys that really just kind of, dug their heels in and helped groom us, I think, in all ways. I mean, it was phenomenal to think about how the game how those guys helped change the game for us in general.
Yeah, and how we kind of helped change the game for the guys that are there now. It's cool that, like, it's an honor to have guys like Kane and DC come to AKA and Khabib and then end up making the careers they have. You know what I mean? Like, off kind of what we all sort of started. And it was, I don't know. It's cool, man. It's cool being a part of that. And we took our lumps, though, for sure, man. I remember you didn't get in the UFC like your first 3 fights because you were getting damaged too much from sparring.
Yeah, it was. I remember
you couldn't get your fight.
My first UFC fight was supposed to be at UFC 37.5, and I was 1 week away on my very last sparring session, and Frank Shamrock elbowed me. I had Frank against the ropes. I was trying to take him down, and he spear-elbowed me right in my spine, and it activated my sciatica. And I got to tell you, man, I couldn't walk for like almost 2 weeks because I fucked my back up. And I was a week away from my fight. And Frank and I had never got along really a whole lot in the beginning. Later on, throughout my career, we got along. But, during the somewhat in the early Strikeforce days, but then later on in the Strikeforce days, we hated each other. But yeah, it was one of those things, man. It was unfortunate as I'd been signed. It's still funny. I talked to Sean Shelby, and Sean will tell anybody, I probably still have the record for someone who signed their contract to fight, hey, sign my contract with the UFC. I didn't fight for almost a year and a half because I signed my contract with the UFC right the same day that the same night we had the Shogun fights in Hawaii. So I fought in Shogun, which is a Sean Shelby promotion with his ex-wife, Helen. Those two had thrown a fight together in Hawaii, and I had fought on that card. I had fought Kid Yamamoto, rest in peace. And that fight got me signed by Dana White in the hotel lobby of the Ala Moana Hotel in Hawaii that night. And it was almost a year and a half. I want to say it was like more than a year and a half, 18 months or something like that up until my first fight, because I got hurt like 2 or 3 times leading into that. And Sean will tell you, he's the person who signed their fight contract and then didn't fight for like almost 2 years after we had signed him because he just kept getting injured. It's like the longest tenure or whatever of someone who just signed a contract and never fought for us. You know, because I remember I had to fight Razor Rob McCullough in the middle of that whole thing because I had no money. Yeah. And I ended up fighting in the WFA and fighting Rob McCullough because I had no money. And it was like, and then Joe Silva said, Josh, if you lose this fight, like, you're cut. And so I was really playing with fire. Yeah. And I had taken a bunch of small little low level shows with all of us in Idaho. I remember, like, it would be me, you, other guys that would go up there and fight in these other shows. I mean, Bobby, I think, had fought. I know Trevor had fought a couple times. You, myself, somebody else, a couple other guys had fought at the time. In these other Idaho shows. But that's how I was able to nickel and dime my way through my earlier part of my career, especially when I was in the UFC, because no one wanted to lose the opportunity of fighting in the UFC. Oh, it's the UFC. Yeah. But they weren't really paying a whole lot. Yeah. I try to tell people, I'm like, my fight with Yves Edwards should have been for the lightweight title, and I only made $8,000. Wow. It's ridiculous. I was supposed to make 8 and 8, and I lost. So that was supposed to be for the title, and I only made $8,000. It was just a horrible, horrible contract. But at the time, it was like you were excited to be there. So disgusting.
Who was it when we went to Idaho? So I went there and fought. I don't remember who it was at the time, but I remember I went there and fought. You fought. All the guys fought. And there was somebody that came with us from Team AK, and they were the only one in the blue corner. And I remember we were running shop in the red corner. Like we had our locker room. They had their locker room. And I remember that the canvas was made out of like sandpaper. It was like the U.S. Postal Service was on there, and it was like sandpaper. So everybody that went to the ground just had no skin left, and we were just like kicking ass in the red corner. So like they just kept wheelbarrowing people into the blue corner, and he was in the blue corner, and he was just traumatized. I forgot who it was, but he was just like so traumatized because he was just seeing all these people show back up after the fights, and they were just battered, dude. Just like completely battered, no skin. And he was freaked out, and I don't remember who it was that was with us, and we're just like, yeah, just go out there and just fight, man, do your thing. And I can't remember who it was, but it was such a funny story because he was like, fuck, man. He goes, dude, every time they bring somebody back, they're just so traumatized. They're so like beat up. And like, he goes, that's all I see, dude. Like my mentality is like going down the fucking drain every time somebody comes back to my locker room.
I remember we had so many good, we had done so many good events where we had all went together. And it was almost like road trip stuff.
Yeah, it was.
Like we would all go together. It was fucking amazing. I do remember there was an event that we had all fought on. It was one of Pat Minahan's friends, and Pat had I can't remember his name, but I remember the story.
That's how old we are, bro. We can't even remember half. That's how old we are right now, dude. We're trying to remember names and shit.
I call it CTE.
Yeah, dude. It's a little bit of that too.
But there was a kid that Pat Minahan had brought. It was good jiu-jitsu kid, kind of long and lanky, fought at the same weight class I did. Anyways, I think this is probably the kid that you're talking about. He had fought, and he had won. They had all partied that night before we went to the airport the next day, and I want to say it was like in Boise somewhere. Mm-hmm. Anyways, we show up at the airport. And this knucklehead, I can't remember his name.
Yeah,
remember he was on Somas.
Yeah, he couldn't even walk.
Relaxants.
Yeah,
and he couldn't even walk, and he was drooling from his mouth. I mean, it was so bad. I think we had to put him in a wheelchair and drive and like push him to the gate. But I was just like, what in the fuck happened? And later on, we found out that he was one of those guys that was addicted to to muscle relaxants and Vicodin and oxys and stuff.
And dude, I want to say later on,
I think he OD'd on it and later on died. A horrible story I just told. I didn't even realize it was going that way.
That might have been him, man.
That he ended up passing away from overdose of oxys and muscle relaxants. That's crazy. But anyways,
you would have never known though. Like he trained hard. He won the fights. He did good. He's one of those guys that shows you like these guys that have these problems sometimes with these pills. It's like you wouldn't know. Like I was surprised to hear Bob tell me how bad he was on the plane, and he was carrying him kind of off the plane and stuff. And I was like, really? Like, are you sure? And like I couldn't believe it. So I was like, I would have never known, man.
Yeah, he almost kept us from all getting on because he was like literally like hanging like this on the wheelchair, and he was drooling from one side of his mouth, and it was scary. Like to think he couldn't walk. We had to put him in a wheelchair because he couldn't walk. He would try to take a step, and his foot would like one leg would kind of come up, and it almost looked like he had that drop foot that you see some of these fighters get when they get kicked in the calf too much.
Yeah.
It's like his foot would just go limp and he would almost trip and fall. And we're like, what in the fuck is going on? And then he had told, like, we kind of went through his bag a little bit. And then I think Pat Minahan had told us, like, he's like, bro, he took like 2 or 3 Somas. And I'm like, what in the hell? Like, and at the time, that was during all that stuff that was going on with Mark Kerr. Remember Mark Kerr was talking about how he was addicted to morphine, oxy, and all that other stuff. And Vicodin. And so when you hear those stories, and I looked it up and I started talking like with people, and they're like, dude, if you take one muscle relaxer, it just knocks you out. It knocks you out. I mean, so when that happens and you see this guy, he's taking like 2 or 3, 4 or 5 at a time, I'm like thinking to myself, man, no wonder you can't function. Surprised he was still awake, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to bring the conversation down. Shit, I didn't know it was the same guy at first. Yeah. So what about you, man? Like, so how's everything going with like the present time? Like, what are you doing? And you're not doing quarantine so much. I see you have your gym open and you're doing grappling and everything else. Like, I can't even believe that. Like, we're opening for Muay Thai in a week.
I think when it comes down to it, right? I had too many people hitting me, especially members, hitting me up saying, "Look, for my mental health, for me to get through this." That I need to get back into the gym. I need to get back to some sort of normalcy. And people were hitting me up like, hey, can I rent your gym? Can I give you money to like come in there and train? And I was like, look, I can't just come down there for an hour just so you can work out. Oh, unlock the doors, let you work out, and then leave. Like it's not going to work that way. I don't want to set the precedent for it to be that way. And when I started getting like anywhere between 20 to 25 people saying like, hey, like I'm at home literally like doing like, a bag of Coke a day. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not good. This isn't healthy for people that I know and I care about.
Yeah.
And, and people they're like, literally, I'm going through cocaine. I'm going through, I'm drinking, I'm drinking, a case of beer, within a day. And I'm thinking to myself, like, and when I started reading all the stats of people that drug addiction had went up, overdoses had went up, suicides have gone up, everything on top of the normal tragedy that was going on. Like this is also escalating and getting out of hand too.
Yeah.
And now that I've opened the doors for the gym and I've just decided that like, hey, I had everyone sign COVID waivers, I've had everyone sign, injury waivers as well for my gym.
Right.
Everyone that come to the gym, they have to be a member. So they've already signed these things and they have agreed to pay the membership dues. So they know what they're getting themselves into with the chances and liabilities. On top of that as well, I've talked to people on the police force. I've talked to firefighters, and I've talked to people that work for the mayor of San Jose. And all the conversation and talking pieces is that we are gradually opening up. I had opened up a little bit earlier than expected, but this is also a small business.
Yeah.
How are you releasing? And I'm not condoning a lot of what's going on, politically. I don't care about. I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that when the cities are letting out pedophiles, rapists, criminals out of jail, but yet turning around and arresting small business owners.
Yeah.
After having my conversation with, for opening up and trying to make a living, after having my conversation with people on the police force, and after having my conversation with the firefighters and some people that work in the offices of the mayor, they just said, like, look, just tread carefully. We're trying not to write citations. We're trying not to make arrests. We're doing everything we can. We understand that small businesses are trying to operate and do the best they can as well to stay open, because we haven't even hit the hardest part of this whole thing, which is the recovery.
Yeah.
And that's going to be prolonged as well. Given the fact that some of these states are not opening and not allowing small businesses to operate. And I just said for myself, as a human being, I cannot allow people that I know to be directly affected, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. And if they consider this like their sanctuary or their outlet, my gym, then I'm going to go ahead and let it open. And, and I'll just take it on the chin, because financially, I'm the one that financially, I can't dish out millions, but I'm saying financially, like if this came down to having to fight, for the stability of like the gym, I'm fine with closing the gym. Like if someone wants to try and sue me, I'd be like, you know what? I'm under an LLC. I'll just close the gym and move on and just, whatever, you can file bankruptcy and move on. But for me, I would feel like I'm doing the best I can for humanity by giving these people outlets to train and giving these people outlets to, to take care of themselves, just not physically, but mentally, and a healthier person is less likely to get COVID. A mentally strong person is less likely to interrupt and cause riots and loot and do things that they're not supposed to be doing and break the law. These healthier people have a better mindset on what is to be expected from them. And so when I'm talking to you about this is for humanity, I think it was better for me to go ahead and, I don't want to say bend the rules. I'm actually breaking the rules, but I'm doing it for the greater good of people that I care about and know. And so when people say like, oh, it's not direct, COVID doesn't directly affect you, so you don't care. That's bullshit. It's directly affecting me with the fact that people that I know and care are doing things they shouldn't be doing because they're stuck at home with no jobs. They're not working because their business, the company they work for, is not open, and and they're really not getting a full paycheck. They're making before they were making $1,200 to $1,500 a week, and now they're making $250 a week. There's a big difference, man. When you're trying to make rent, you're trying to pay your mortgage, whatever it is. It's just not fair. It's not fair, and I understand life isn't fair. I'm one of the proponents of someone that says, yeah, you know what, lift yourself up by the bootstraps kind of person. I'm that person, but I also think that the argument is being shaped that right now life isn't fair for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we just got to figure out a way to get through it and work together. And for me, working together means if I have to open my gym and take it on the chin, when someone comes to write me a citation for opening early, then I'm going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
To make sure that someone's mental health is taken care of, to make sure that someone is trying to live a healthy lifestyle, but not able to because they're stuck at home. Just woe is me, living in that, drowning themselves in their miseries. I can't do that. I can't allow someone to do that, because I went through those phases throughout my career where, I would drown myself in drinking when I couldn't, I'd be out at the clubs partying all the time. You worked at a couple of bars as barbacks and bartenders, and you saw me out there a couple of times.
Yeah.
That lifestyle, just as I got older, just not for me. But back then, when I didn't have fights, when I was sitting on the shelf, when I was injured, I was out drinking, I was out fighting in clubs, being a professional UFC fighter, being a professional fighter, period. And it's not healthy, man. It's not healthy. And I know these young kids that are 24, 26, 28 years old, hitting me up like, man, I got to train, I got to do something. I'm mentally not right now. Like, I need to get in there and do something. And that's all it's going to take, to get them through these younger years of their life and give them some sort of direction. And if opening my gym does that for them, then I'll take it on the chin, man.
Yeah, I totally understand, man. I totally agree with you. And it's good that you're doing that. I don't know what the logistics and the law is there. We've been under strict guidelines here. So like the government shut my gym down. And at one point, the government shut the roads down where we couldn't actually go in different areas. So I couldn't actually even go to the gym. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so now finally, it looks like in 1 week we get to open, have Muay Thai, and stuff like that. And we're getting the same thing. A lot of people want to get out of this quarantine and get over here and train. So we got a lot of people booked. I think it's probably one of the biggest high seasons we've ever had coming up pretty soon. So going on that, though, with the quarantine and the coronavirus, what do you think about these fights with, the UFC continuing with no audience, doing Yas Island, doing at the Apex and stuff like that? And then what about Bellator? Is Bellator going to be doing some fights like that as well? Like, do you agree with that? Like, just to keep it going and keep sports going and do what it takes? I mean, I assume you would. But
I absolutely agree with what Dana White is doing. I absolutely agree with the approach that Bellator is taking as well. There's no right or wrong answer, because we're in uncharted territory, and we've said this over and over again. This is unprecedented. We have never been in a situation like this. I mean, they talked about, I think, the swine flu from like whenever the hell it was, way back when. But the thing is, none of us were alive then, so we don't know what really happened back then.
The Spanish flu.
Right now. And also, sports weren't as relevant as they are now. People, like, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about, keeping people sane, sports is what helps do that.
Yeah.
And back then they didn't realize that, because people were so ingrained in just trying to get by in life, trying to make money to buy a house, to have more kids, to make more money. So they were still trying to get their shit together back then. In this day and age, people use sports as an outlet. People use training at a gym as an outlet. People use activities as an outlet. Do I think at the time when Dana was trying to make that push here in Lemoore, when he was talking about having the shows in Lemoore and having fights there, I thought that was the wrong time.
Yeah.
We're 2 to 3 weeks out. He's trying to shove a fight in there. And the safety, no one knew what was going on. No one knew the transitions of how it transmitted. No one knew any of this stuff, and they still don't fucking know. They still don't know. They're just releasing now that it doesn't live on hard surfaces.
Yeah,
they said that. Like the temperature of 77 degrees now, it actually kills the virus within seconds. Like, nobody knows.
I think that's why it's so good in Thailand, man. We have hardly any cases here. I think that's why it's so fucking hot.
And so we're getting to that level now where it's like now, I mean, I think also 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when they had their first fight, I think it was time. Yeah. It was time. I didn't support when he was trying to do it in California and he was trying to shove it down everyone's throat and trying to get it in there. I didn't support it at that time because it was still fresh.
Yeah.
But when he finally did do the event, I was like cheering him on. I'm glad you got it done. The state of Florida was open. He took it to Florida and did it. And it was all done the best he potentially could do it. Like I said, uncharted territory. And I very rarely stick up for Dana White. But I got to tell you, and you have a great relationship with Dana White, which I want to talk to you about as well.
I'm sure you do.
he did everything he possibly could do. I mean, think about this. This is how much that he has done. He still swabbed everyone's nose to see if they had COVID at the time. Even after they had tested negative for it, he still made people social distance, still made people wear masks, all those things. If you don't have it, why are you making these people do this? He's doing the best he can.
Right.
That's how ridiculous that people are being. Oh, well, Jacare had it. You don't know who he encountered with, this and that. All you people that are giving it, like digging into him on this, they didn't know that he had it. They didn't know he had it when he came to Florida. They didn't know he had it when he came to the event. And a couple of his corners had it. You didn't know. That's why they did the test.
Yeah.
And a young, healthy, obviously in shape Jacare is going to be fine.
Yeah.
And
fine.
He's at home with his kids, all these other things. He's fine. Okay. Let's not, maybe there was other people that potentially could have been infected, like people that were on the plane ride there, whatever it is. We haven't heard anything yet. So let's not jump the gun and say that, he's killed someone's grandmother. Calm down, you guys. Dana did the best he could with what he had to work with. And I take my hat to him, man. He got sports back on TV, and I think he did a great job of doing it. My approach with the Bellator is they're doing everything that they can, and they're waiting for California to open up, because I think a lot of people of who they have signed, a lot of people that work for the promotion are stationed in California. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, they will be doing shows in California, and I even believe potentially Florida as well. And so they're just trying to make sure that they can do the best they can for everyone. They're pushing theirs out a little bit longer because they want to make sure that all fighters have an opportunity to fight on these cards, because they will have to cram these fights in. I don't know if it's going to be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or 10 weeks of just straight fights, but there will be a lot of fights back to back to back, for the Bellator organization, just like there is right now for the UFC, because they have quotas to meet. They have a certain amount of fights that they promise these fighters to fight every year, and they need to get those fights in, because they understand that these fighters don't make money unless they fight. And so when Dana is being attacked by all these other athletes, whether it's John Jones, Masvidal, whoever else is saying they want more money, I understand why they want more money. And I understand that other people may say this is not the time, but when is the right time? There is no right time to ask for more money. I think everyone's like, oh, when's the time? But in reality, Dana's doing the best he can with what he has. And for those fighters that want to fight, guess what? They're ready to fight. And they're the ones getting the fights.
And going back on the coronavirus too, they just announced that the asymptomatic people that are getting coronavirus, it's very rare that they can transmit it to other people. And considering that the majority of people are asymptomatic, long story short, man, I think this is a bad flu. And I think we do need to protect the people who are vulnerable, the people who have pre-existing medical conditions, and keep them locked up until we get a vaccine and a cure. But I think the healthy young people should go on with their lives. And I think the 3 months we've been locked up is bullshit. Like, I think it's bullshit. And I think it's going to be proven when all this protesting and all this stuff where everybody's together, in the next couple of weeks, when there's no huge spike in COVID cases and people dying and going to the hospital, I think that's going to prove that, there's going to be a lot of corona being spread with these protests and these people in these gatherings, but it's not going to have the impact that people think. So going on that, I agree with Dana, with what he's doing and keeping sports alive. He's doing the best he can. Everybody has to try to do what they can. And if he's not doing anything illegal, then how can you blame him? He's trying to get people fights, and he's looking out for his employees. All right, so I got to thank our sponsor, aka Thailand, the world's premier luxury training resort here in Phuket, Thailand. We are about to be open, guys. We are cleaning the gym right now. All new bags, all new equipment. It's going to be the cleanest gym, one of the cleanest gyms in the world. Definitely the cleanest gym in Thailand. New mats, new bags, new equipment. We've recovered all the weight benches and gear. Repainted everything. We've cleaned everything up. We've added lunar air purifiers to all the rooms, which is NASA technology. Antibacterial. It does crazy stuff to kill the germs. So we are opening up soon. The reopen special I have extended. So if you go to akthailand.com, you can save 30% off your training, off your group training for any time in the future. So depending on when your country allows you to travel and get here to Thailand from your quarantine, or if you just want to wait, maybe you're planning a year from now or 2 years from now, it doesn't matter. This is the best deal we've ever done. I'm going to extend it because I am overwhelmed at the response that we've had. It's one thing to get good TripAdvisor reviews and have people come in and talk about the gym being a great gym and they're happy to be here and they've achieved their success and they've done this and that. That is so rewarding to me, considering it was such a hard thing to build this gym and it was such a big risk and it worked out so well and it's such a rewarding job to have. But when I did this 30% reopen special during the quarantine, when there was so many uncertainties in the world and, Thailand was closed down, the gym was closed down, the airports were closed down, many other countries, the same, airports closed down, people unsure of when they were going to get to travel. A lot of people were getting laid off and losing their jobs. To have had so many people that have pre-booked training and sent the money for that, the 30% off to pre-book their training is just another level of appreciation that I am so grateful for from all of you guys. That really shows that dedication that you guys have to come here and book your training and that you will be here. So I commend you on making that step and putting it down and basically making sure that you're going to come and you're going to make that trip. And I'm honored and humbled that I have been a part of something like AKA Thailand that is creating this for you and enabling so many of you to have something to look forward to and that you are looking forward to it. That's one of the biggest compliments to what we've done and what we've built with the team here and the staff and the trainers. I'm just overwhelmed by it. So I am extending this 30% special probably until we open. So probably until June 15th. If you go to akthailand.com, you can pre-book your training, 30% off all group training. And that's a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, however long you want to book. You can get 30% discount, the biggest sell we've ever had. If you have any questions, you can email info@akthailand.com. We will answer any of your questions, help any of your travel plans, get you set up with your accommodation, get you an airport transfer, do anything that you need to help make your trip easier. So anyway, for all of you that are watching the podcast, thank you so much as well. I'm grateful to you as well. And I don't want to keep rambling on here, but if you haven't seen the podcast and you don't know what AK Thailand is, here is a video to give you an idea.
What's up, everybody? I am here in Thailand. This is the first time I've ever been here. Been dying to come here for years. The great Mike Swick, he's one of the big reasons he's been trying to pull me down here. What he built down here, AKA Thailand, is incredible. There's people here from all over the world. You can train mixed martial arts here, jiu-jitsu. They have weightlifting, they have cardio, and obviously they have Muay Thai, boxing, everything. I'm telling you guys, I know everybody wants to go to Thailand because Thailand's so cool, but you can't come to Thailand without coming to AKA Thailand. Come on.
Going on that, I know you want to talk about the Dana thing. I wanted to ask you, because I know you've mentioned this before, and this has been a thing for you, and a lot of people have moved over to Bellator. I wanted to get your thoughts on the guys like John Jones and Masvidal asking for more money, especially after Dana said that they just signed new deals. Now, I'm a fighter, so I want to state my stance first. As a fighter, I am 100% wanting to make more money and be a fighter and want more for the fighters. I'm a fighter at heart. I've been a fighter for years with you, obviously. So I always support the fighters and want to see fighters get paid more and get more money. On the other hand, being in business, and having the business side now, and that being predominantly what I do, run a corporation, I have 50 plus employees, and to me now I see the business side of things where it's a lot more, when you sign a contract, if I sign a contract in business right now, that contract is ironclad. I have to know when I sign that contract, I have to assume that contract can't change, and it's impossible to change this contract. Maybe things could change. Maybe I can get lucky and change it in the future if I want to. But as of right now, when I sign this contract, it's ironclad. And that contract goes through, and that's just what it is. But with fighters, they sign contracts. And I've never seen too many fighters sign contracts where they're disappointed. Usually they're putting it on Twitter and Instagram like, yeah, 4-fight deal with the UFC or Bellator, whatever it is, and I'm so happy and, things are great. But the sport in general is very unique in the fact that these employees that sign these contracts are in positions where they can make themselves super famous in one fight or two fights. And I think that's what the gamble is with these organizations. Like when Dana gives these contracts, he gambles that they do make themselves famous and worth more money, and then he gets them at that cheaper price, and then he wins the gamble. Just like I'm sure he gives contracts to people and they fizzle out and don't make money, and then he ends up losing money on them because they end up in the prelims and don't make money. So I see kind of both sides. Again, I want to see fighters get paid more money, but I also see the side of if you sign a contract, I think you have to honor that contract, or you have to at least do what you can during that contract so that you have that negotiation power when that contract is up to do a new contract. Then you can say, hey, I did your contract. I became a superstar. Now that gets changed a little bit because I'm hearing about 8-fight contracts. I never heard about 8-fight contracts back when I was fighting. It was like 3 and 4-fight contracts. So that could change things a little bit more. But considering they just got contracts according to Dana, what's your overall thoughts on Masvidal and Jon Jones asking for more money so soon after they signed a new contract? Are they in the right for that 100%, or do you believe more about the contract signing and the obligation to that? What's your thoughts?
Well, Mike Swick, you have always been a company man, and I got to tell you,
but that's out of it, though. I am. I have been. I've always. You're right about that. I've always been a company man because I'm appreciative of what I got and from where I came from. But out of that, I think I do make sense with what I say because a contract is a contract, and we don't know what the UFC spends. Everyone thinks the UFC is this like. Now, well, especially when it sells for $4 billion, it's this gigantic company that has all this money, and you want to get that money. But you got to understand the UFC sold for $4 billion or whatever right now. It's not the same UFC as when the Fertittas had it.
No, it's not.
So now you have owners that are in debt $4 billion. So like I was asking another guy I had on the podcast before, Kung Lee actually, who's in court against the UFC, say you do win a lawsuit against the UFC, the Ali Act and the monopoly or whatever this case is, now you're battling a company that's in debt $4 billion and just trying to survive. It's not the same as the old UFC. Now, what happens if you do hurt them, like you cripple them, or you possibly cause them to go bankrupt or something? What is that going to do to the overall sport? And that can trickle into Bellator and trickle into Ryzen and ONE FC and all these other organizations, because all the organizations have a role in building the sport and doing things. So I'm kind of tossed with that. So biased aside or whatever, or company man aside, I feel like I have logical points, and I want to get your points on those as well.
Okay, so in a free market industry, right?
Yeah.
If the UFC folds, so be it. You have Bellator, and I'm not being biased. I'm being 100% direct. Right. You have Bellator, you have ONE, you have Ryzen, and there will be other promotions that rise up from the bottom to take their place. Sure, maybe they won't be what the UFC is now with the connections that they have now, but in the free market industry, that's exactly what is meant to happen. Okay, so when you give that reason, like, oh, those fighters will all find a home. They will. There's 3 other organizations that are that you could say are pretty damn good, and not even. Oh,
but
sorry,
you think Bellator can pay? You think Bellator can pay? I mean, I love Bellator. I have nothing against Scott Coker. Bellator is a great organization. No. Do you think Bellator can pay Jon Jones money and Masvidal money though?
So look, absolutely.
Not because they're a bad organization, but it takes time to get to that level, right? The UFC's been there long enough to get that money.
I'm not even talking about just Bellator. I'm talking about ONE. ONE can pay him that money.
You think ONE can
pay him? Yes, absolutely. Eddie Alvarez left. He fought out his contract and he left. He got paid triple what he was making in the UFC. Triple.
Yeah, but Jon Jones money, dude, that's like $5 million plus.
Agree. I do agree with what you're talking about. The Jon Jones money, the Masvidal money, the Nate Diaz money, all that you are right. That is a lot of money. Yeah. Okay? But you also have to think though in terms of, look, if those guys did leave, let's just say the UFC decided not, and those guys did leave, they would generate more money for that organization in long term. Okay, so I think promotions like Bellator, and ONE FC and PFL maybe not so much because they're a tournament base and they just are like, look, we do $1 million, let's take it or leave it, right. But Jon Jones could go there and fight every fucking year. In every tournament, probably in every weight class, heavyweight and fucking light heavyweight, and just walk through everyone and make $2 million in a couple days worth of work. The money he would generate for the new promotion, whether it's ONE or Bellator or Ryzen or whatever, the money he would bring in would eventually trickle down, would trickle in to making sure that it was profitable. The other thing as well, let me just tell you this. If somebody like John or Masvidal or Nate or Nick was able to come over to, I'm just going to use Bellator because I have a relationship with them. Who's to say that they wouldn't use them on a back end deal? Like, say, hey, I will give you this amount of money per pay-per-view, or I will give you this amount of money per view, whether it's CBS, whether it's Showtime, whether it's Paramount Network, whether it's, Channel 5 in the UK. I could give you the back end deal on regular TV. I'll only have you fight on regular TV, and whatever money comes in from those sponsors or those endorsement deals from that, we pay you off of that. There's that, as well as we could potentially give you other ways to make money. We could have you as an analyst. We could have you as someone who has their own show on CBS. There is ways for networks, especially the network that now Viacom and CBS and Showtime have all merged. You mean to tell me that they wouldn't find a way to make sure that those guys that are probably the biggest names in that organization, if they were to come over, they wouldn't find ways to make sure that they made money? I highly doubt that.
But the question is,
some of the best and smartest people that work in those companies, there's no damn way they wouldn't find a way for those people to make money.
But the question is, so Bellator is a business, the UFC is a business. Considering Dana White didn't, put a gun to these guys' heads and make them sign these contracts, Masvidal and John Jones, do you consider him a bad person because he won't budge from his contract? I mean, he's just sticking to what the contract says. He's not changing the contract. He's not saying, or the UFC, maybe not Dana specifically, but the UFC is not budging from their contract is all they're doing. So you signed a contract and they're just saying you signed the contract, it's staying the way it is. So you can't go to Bellator, you can't go to these other places. You can either fight or you don't have to fight. It is what it is. Do you think they're wrong for that? Or do you it's not considering the fact they're not trying to change it or do anything different, whereas these guys, John Jones and Masvidal, are trying to change what they signed. That's the question. Are they doing something wrong or not? Because most businesses, they don't want to lose John Jones. They want John Jones to fight. I mean, they're trying to make the most amount of money possible with Masvidal and John Jones. So they're kind of doing the right thing on their part. And I agree, John Jones, if they could get more money than Masvidal, could be doing the right thing on their part. But are they wrong?
I don't think Dana's doing the wrong thing. What I do think is this. There's a couple things that you brought into play in this situation. In this, there's hidden questions in there. Okay, one is, first off, when you were fighting, it was 3 and 4 fight contracts.
Right.
Now it's 6 and 8 and sometimes 10 fight deals. Okay, so when the UFC had bought Strikeforce, Dana had said, or not Dana, but the UFC had hit me up and said, no, we want you to sign a 6 or 8 fight deal. I was like, absolutely not.
Right.
There's no way. I'm going to sign a 4 fight deal. I plan on being the champion. I plan on being in that number 1 contender spot, whatever it is. And I want to renegotiate my money. I renegotiated going in, even though I only had one. I think I had 1 or 2 more fights left on my contract. I think I had 1 more fight left on my contract. And I renegotiated going into that. So when I renegotiated, they wanted me to sign a 6. And they actually asked for an 8. And I said, absolutely not. And they said, okay, 6. And I was like, no. I said, it's a 4 fight deal. I plan on being around champion. I want to be the champ. So that all being said, I signed a 4 fight deal. And I'm thankful that I was able to do that, or that I did do that. These other guys are not being given that option.
So you did the right. So what I'm seeing is what you did the right thing for what you wanted to do, and I would think that John Jones and Masvidal, instead of being in the position that they're in right now, they should have done what you did. But now you're saying, I guess that so they're not giving them that option. That option's off the table.
They're not giving them the option because they are so good. That's why. So the UFC didn't know if I was going to be good or not. They didn't know I was going to beat Nate. They didn't know these things. So they were like, you know what? Let's give them the 4. Let's see what happens. We'll go from there. With Masvidal, they already know he's a star right now. The other thing as well is they re-up you when you fight someone like a Nate Diaz. Okay, yeah. John Jones, they re-up him as many times as they can because every time he fights and defends his title, it gets increased 3 more fights. So it adds another couple fights onto his contract every time he defends his title because they don't want the champion to leave.
Right.
So, but with Masvidal, every time they give you a big money fight like they did with the Nate Diaz fight and the BMF belt and all this other stuff, that automatically will re-up your contract. Not because it's the BMF title shot, but it's like, look, we just gave you a huge fight. The UFC paid him a ton of money. And now they're like, look, we want a return on our investment like you're talking about. And the return on the investment is you're going to sign this long-term deal. And the long-term deal is this. And so the Masvidal part, I feel like it's because he's been in the game for 16 years. He wants to finally start seeing the real money roll in. He's got a little taste of it with the Nate Diaz thing.
I agree with that. I mean,
I understand the argument with Dana and him. I get Dana's side. There's no doubt about it. I understand Dana's side. The John Jones part of it, I don't get. And I'm not a John Jones fan. I never have been. From the all the other stuff that went on outside the cage, as well as, the abuse of steroids or whatever, dick pills, whatever you want to call it. I've never been a John Jones fan, but I understand John Jones' argument right now. I'm tired of beating these guys at 205 because I'm losing my motivation, and I'm also looking bad while I'm doing it now. And he hasn't looked good his last couple of fights. He should have lost to Dominic Reyes. I think a lot of people have said. I thought he lost
Santos
to
wasn't
Santos.
a great fight.
I thought he lost to Santos.
I thought he lost
and Santos.
too.
People need to remember Santos was on one knee after the first round.
Yeah.
So there's no way. I think that his lack of motivation, or maybe it's his lack of, maybe it's lack of not using PEDs. Who knows? But I think it's a lack of motivation. Okay. I think his motivation to fight guys that he knows or thinks he can beat pretty easily is being shown in the cage. His desire to fight Ngannou is someone that nobody else wants to fucking fight. So why not pay him more? Why not? I mean, if he's making $5 million a fight, pay him another $2 million. Pay him another $3 million. Who gives a shit? You're telling me on your profit margins, right? No, I get it. They $4.4 billion. Whatever.
Imagine being in debt $4 billion, and in a big way you're getting that money back is live events, and then all of a sudden you lose live events. Like, imagine that stress. Like, that's gotta be crazy.
I do understand that, but there has been an uptick in pay-per-view buys. There has been an uptick in viewership as well. So either tell him, you can sit him down. I think in a situation in which he's in, Dana should have had a relationship with him already, good enough to say, hey, we're going to sit you down. We're going to have you on. Maybe we'll put you on regular TV. Maybe we won't. Whatever money comes in based off of viewership, we'll pay you off of that. I don't know if you recall, but when Kane fought Dos Santos in his first fight, when he lost,
UFC on Fox,
he had hurt his knee the week before. And they told him, like, look, we're going to make it worth your time for Fox. We're gonna have you fight. If you're okay with fighting, he said, yeah, we will pay you your pay-per-view numbers on regular TV. So what did they end up getting? I want to say they ended up getting like 9 million views. It was some astronomical amount of viewership for that show. It was fucking insane. Yeah, I remember. And it was only one fight on that show. Remember, the whole fight was like 19 seconds.
Yeah.
But it was some astronomical amount of view. And I want to say he was making like a little bit over $2 per pay-per-view buy. So if it was a $9 million view, or I think it was like 6 or 9, I can't remember. He made probably $12 or $13 million off that. That was just based off the viewership. That wasn't even his pay. I want to say his pay was like $500,000 or $750,000. That's fucking insane. I think you sat John Jones down and said, look, let's do something like this for one fight, whatever. Ngannou fight, let's make it a start. It's not for a title. So Big John McCarthy and I talk about this all the time on our show, weighing in. We're talking about, like, hey, if you're going to do something like this, it's got to be a title shot. But here's the thing. You got to keep Ngannou busy as well. This poor guy's been waiting on the sideline for DC and Stipe to fight forever. So let the guy get the fight in. Let's sell the hype train. Let's get it going, bud. Let's get this thing. We haven't had fights, but let's get the cash money fights going. I see Dana's side on the Masvidal thing, and I'm a huge Masvidal fan. Love it. Been fans of his since, back in the day, Strikeforce days.
Yep.
But to the John Jones part, and like I said, I'm not a fan of John Jones, but I see John's argument. I'm going up to heavyweight. I'm taking a huge chance. My motivation at 205 is bleh. I'm done. I'm bored. I'm bored beating these guys, knowing I could beat them. He hasn't looked the same. Let's do something that sparks his interest. I'm one of those guys that if the guy that they put in front of me didn't motivate me, I would kind of fight to that level. And I didn't really train hard. I'd go to the clubs, I'd be out, do like things like that. Mm-hmm. When you put someone in front of me that motivated me, look at the way I fought Gil. Look at the way I fought Nate. Look at the way I fought guys that motivated me.
Yeah.
I fought them completely different than the way that I fought other guys. Because there's the focus is there. I don't see any focus right now on John Jones. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Ngannou's going to bring that focus out on him.
Yeah,
Dana's got to find a way to make some adjustments with John Jones and for that fight to happen, because otherwise no one's really paying attention. Like, I think people have lost interest in John Jones because
100%.
he makes it look so easy. And not only does he make it look easy, now it's starting to look boring because he's fighting conservative. I'm not getting hit. These guys are too slow. They're not long enough. Whatever the deal is, you could tell there's either a lack of motivation or just something physically is just not going on with him right now, where he just doesn't want to, he's not putting out, the output's not there. I think it's the motivation. I think if you put him in the cage with Ngannou, you're going to see reinvigorated John Jones, and you're going to see the old flashy one that does things that he hasn't been doing for the last 4 or 5 fights. Yeah. And that's scary to think. I want to see the spinning elbows again. I want to see the takedowns. I want to see the foot sweeps. I want to see all those things that we know John Jones can bring. The problem is he has no motivation to do it. And I think the argument with Dana White is how is this your champion for so damn long? But yet you guys are having fucking media beefs. Are you kidding me?
But that's a question that goes both ways. So maybe it's my ignorance on the details, because I don't know the details, and I can't obviously argue the facts here. But John Jones, this is not his first contract. He's had multiple contracts with UFC. Yeah. He knows how it goes. He knows how it works. Why did he sign this new contract then? That's the question.
It's not signing a new contract. His contract extends sure, he'll get a new contract, but his contract extends every 3 fights or every time he defends his title. It keeps continuing to extend. So no
he
matter
didn't have
what,
a choice to not go with the new deal that Dana said, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but he's not talking about the deal that he had to fight the guys that he's fighting. He's fine with that money.
So they basically made the deal, and then the Ngannou thing came up, and that's when John was like,
yes.
whoa, this is a fucking huge fight.
Yes, it is.
And it is a huge fight. I'll give you that.
So to approach it like John McCarthy is approaching it, it's a big fight.
Yeah.
And for it to be a big fight, let's negotiate that fight outside your deal and come back. Now, Dana's been on the record to say, like, look, it's a hard sell to say that I need the gate money, and I understand that. But there has been an uptick in viewership, and there has been an uptick in pay-per-view buys and things like that. But the Conor gate is what, $18-19 million. Yeah. Okay. The John Jones gates are probably, I'd say, around 8 to 9 to maybe even 10 million, something like that. Maybe they're less, maybe they're more. I don't know. But that's something I don't know. But in that area, that right there would probably pay for at least John Jones, and then the rest of it can go through pay-per-view buys and money that came in from endorsements and sponsors and things like that. I understand that. I do get that. But in John Jones' argument, right, and when you're talking about like the NFL and they do like a 3 and 6 year deal and things like that, have you noticed in the NFL, players have started gambling on themselves and doing 1 year deals or 2? Like, I'm gonna do a 1 year deal. You pay me the whatever the deal going rate is for my position at this, and I'm gonna do a 1 year deal. I'm gonna bank on myself. The UFC doesn't allow that. You have to do a 4 fight deal or a 6 fight deal, 8 fight deal, whatever it is. Now, you're saying, for me, defending John Jones again, is if I was going to take a tight end that's making tight end money, and I'm going to put him to receiver, he's basically a receiver already, but there's a difference in pay, and the pay is so drastic. Like Jimmy Graham wanted to be paid like a receiver when he was with the Saints. Mm-hmm. And they said, no, you're a tight end. We're not going to pay you like a receiver. Even though he was the best fucking tight end in the game, and he was catching more balls than all the other receivers on the Saints. They said, no, you're a tight end. We're going to pay you tight end money. Sure, we're going to pay you high-end tight end money, but you're still a tight end. John Jones is going through that position right now. He is a 205-pounder going to heavyweight, fighting a fucking scary, scary guy in Francis Ngannou, and you want to still pay me 205 money. That's not going to work, man. That's not going to work. I need to get paid this for this fight. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe if he beats Ngannou, he'll stay at heavyweight. He ain't coming back down. Winkeljohn even said, if he goes to heavyweight, there's no reason for him to come back down.
Well, especially if he beats Ngannou. I mean, Jesus, who else would you be worried about? I mean, after that.
I mean, like, Stipe posed a little bit of a threat, but not much.
Not after DC beats him, though.
Yeah, I don't think there's a really. Ngannou is the real threat there.
Yeah,
John Jones got better wrestling. John Jones' wrestling is good enough to take down Derek Lewis, Volkov, all the other guys that are fighting in that weight class. John's got better wrestling. He can take them all down, put them on their back, and they're like turtles.
Yeah.
And so wrestling-wise, it was only DC that I think had the ability to take him down. And even he struggled, extremely struggled to get the takedown because of the length and the height of John Jones. My point is John Jones is trying to do something in going up to weight and going up to heavyweight to fight the scariest guy in the heavyweight division. You got to tip him. You got to tip him some more money, man. You got to give him some more money.
But the thing is, he doesn't have to. So that's the thing. Like, what does John Jones do?
You're right. He doesn't have to. And John also doesn't have to go to heavyweight and fight that fight.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to settle and just make his normal money and just to get paid that kind of money after this whole this stall out, or do you think he's going to? Who do you think is going to cave in? Honestly,
I think that John is going to. John's probably financially. I would imagine he's financially okay. He's living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I mean, things don't cost that much.
That extra $5 million. There's a lot of extra money, dude.
If he's making $5 million a fight, shit, he can retire now. He's fucking living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He'll be fine. This is what I think happens. I think he stays at 205. I think he's vacated. He sounds like he's vacated the title, and he'll just fight whoever at 205 and just walk through these guys and be like, whatever. And I think he'll have lazy, boring performances. And when his contract is up, he will just move on. He'll go somewhere else.
I mean, it's tough because that's from his standpoint, and then from the UFC standpoint, they especially in this no audience having, no live gate having era that we're in right now with coronavirus, they kind of need that John Jones and Ngannou fight, because to be honest with you, I'm with you 100% on John Jones. I'm not that interested in him fighting anymore. Like, I'm really not. I really don't look forward to a John Jones fight if he's not fighting DC. I'm not that interested. Now, Ngannou is one guy that I'm very interested in seeing him fight, because now you're looking at a John Jones that has to show up like the old John Jones. And if he shows up like he showed up against Santos and Reyes and all this stuff, he's going to get knocked out, or could get knocked out, and it could be brutal. And then you can see a champion who's never been beat absolutely just flattened. So it's like, that's a fight that's interesting to everybody. So on the UFC side, it's like, they might have to cave in too, because they need that fight, I think, especially with Conor, running now, and Khabib's tied up, and, we got DC and Stipe, but like, other than that, it's like they kind of need that fight. So it's like, it's weird how this is going to end. I'm very curious to see how they make this happen, because.
Well, here's the thing. You just lost the only guy that I really cared to see fight at 125 and 135 is Henry Cejudo. You just lost him. So he's gone. He's retired. Basically vacated both titles.
Yeah.
He's gone. Who's the other guy that just retired? Someone else just retired.
Who was it?
So Henry retired. So Henry retired. Then you have what's it called? Khabib's gonna fight sometime in September, but you have that weight class now is on hold for a little bit because that fight's not gonna happen until September. Who else do you have? You have John Jones basically vacating the title, and
Conor's gone.
I don't want to see a lackluster performance by him, which is what we're going to continue to see, even if he's not champion or is champion, whatever. He doesn't care. I think he's going to fight out his contract. If he just signed a new contract and deal, he'll just fight it out, and then I think he'll bounce. Masvidal, I think with Masvidal, they'll get it worked out with him.
Yeah,
I think they'll figure out a way to get it worked out with him. That's
my opinion on
that.
He's going to want the money. I mean, Masvidal is in a situation where. I'm with you about the Dana part on that. Like Masvidal is in a situation where he's not the highest ranked guy, but he's a draw, and so he wants to make the money. So I just feel like that's going to get worked out. I don't know, like I said about John Jones, because he's got so much money and he's obviously made so much and done so much. But and Masvidal is doing great too. I love Masvidal, but I think that's going to get worked out. I think he's going to come back and they're going to do some kind of settlement there and get him a fight.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, though, you have a lot of uncertainty right now amongst that whole promotion with all their title holders. You've got at 125 is vacant, which they're fighting. Benavidez is fighting for the title here again coming up. That's as much as I'm a Benavidez fan. It's one of those fights that I feel like that they're shoving down people's throats. And fans are like, eh.
And Aldo and Jan's fighting, and like Jan is a fucking badass fighter, but not a lot of people know who he is.
No one knows who he is. And when we're having this conversation, everyone's like, oh, well, he's fighting Jose Aldo. Look, the reason why he's fighting Jose Aldo for the title is because no one knows who Peter Yan is, and they need some name recognition with that. Yeah. Like, do I think maybe Moraes should have got the fight? Yeah. Do I think maybe Sterling should get the fight? Yeah. But if you put those two guys for a title shot, no one's going to give a fuck. No one's going to care. They're going to click on that and be like, who are these guys again? Huh? I think if Peter beats Jose, it adds more name recognition to him. Look at how much Max Holloway catapulted into the prime time after he beat Jose Aldo.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's true. Like, everyone's like, oh, man, Max is like the greatest of all time in that weight class. Da-da-da. Whether he is or not, that's irrelevant. But they used Jose Aldo as someone for him to go on. Same way with Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
Sure, Conor had the star power, but he also had a whole country behind him.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big difference. Like I've said this before, Bisping, Dan Hardy had whole countries behind them. Okay, GSP, whole country behind them. These people from other countries, their whole country supports them because they haven't had champions in those eras. Now that they have, those countries support them. Beating someone like Jose Aldo made Conor's star power go up. Same thing with Max. Hawaii, boom, Max Holloway fighting for the title against the fucking legend, Jose Aldo. Then he beats him twice, catapults him into stardom. That's all they're looking for, Peter Yan to beat Jose Aldo, to catapult him into stardom. When Peter Yan becomes champion, if he does become champion, which I think he's got a tough task in front of him, if he becomes champion, then you have him fight Sterling. Okay, this is going to be a good fight. Everyone knows who Peter Yan is now. He's the champion. Right. Now we can have these guys fight. Now we don't have to worry about just having Jose Aldo fight if we need him to. That's the way this promotion game works, man. People need to realize that and understand Dana's not fucking stupid. Dana's been in the game a long time, man. There's been a lot of learning lessons along the way. The reason why these champions get extended every time they fight is because BJ Penn fought Matt Hughes, beat him, choked him out, and then left and started his own promotion and became a star. Beat Gomi, beat Henzo, beat Rodrigo Gracie, all in his own promotion. Yeah. He could have done that in the UFC. No, you didn't want to pay him, so he bounced. That's why now they're doing these contracts the way they're doing them. Give me a 6-fight deal. Give me an 8-fight deal. I want to say Rich Franklin signed like the longest term deal in history. It was like a 10-fight deal right before he fought Ken Shamrock. And then if you notice, when you sign those long-term deals, they put a lot of money and effort into you as long as you keep winning. And that's what they did with Rich Franklin. And so the history of the sport, Dana has helped develop, but it's also the learning curves. He's been around from these fighters trying to stick it to him. It is shaped the way that he treats fighters now. And it's warranted. Honestly, it's warranted by him. And I understand. And I'm not a Dana fan. In no way am I a Dana fan. Okay. But you gotta respect what he's been doing. I mean, he's taken the ground. He's taken the promotion. Well, Lorenzo as well. Lorenzo and Frank definitely played a huge part, 100%. But Dana's done a good job. He's done a good job in promoting the organization and getting these guys to be stars. But it's still all about the UFC. It's not about them. And so when you think that the promotion, you're bigger than the promotion, is when they can just tell you to sit your ass down and just take what we give you. And that's kind of what they're going to do to Masvidal. They're going to stick it to him. Like, if you don't want to fight, cool. You don't have to fucking fight. We're good with that. That's why I tip my hat to Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz. They come in, they make their money, they bounce out for a year, and they come back, make their money, they bounce out for a year. I mean, that's what they do. They're brilliant at it. They're gangster, but they still, you want to know why that works for them? Is they still show up to little league shows. They still show up to other, to UFC shows, and they go around and shake hands. They're fucking two of the nicest guys, as much as probably Nate doesn't like me or whatever, but it's like they're still the two of the nicest guys when you see them at events. Yeah. They're extremely nice, man.
They stay relevant.
And they know what they're doing. They're building their brand every time. When the camera flips on them and they light up, they stoke up a blunt. Brilliant marketing from those two guys, And so when the UFC says, hey, you know what, we might have a fight for you, they pick and choose their fights and they negotiate their money. That's kind of when I was talking about with the NFL, when those players, Darrelle Revis played for the Pats, I want to say 1 or 2 years. Came in, won a Super Bowl, decided to sign, I think, for another year, came back, lost Super Bowl, and then bounced. I was like, all right, cool. My stock went up. I got a Super Bowl ring out of it. Okay. That's 1-year deals for NFL players.
Yeah.
The UFC doesn't allow you to do that. 6 and 8 fight deals they try to get you to. I think the lowest is a 4-fight deal, but I think guys like Masvidal, where they're paying him a ton of money, nah, we need to get you to a 6 and 8 fight deal. He'll be there for a long time. Masvidal ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like after the Nate Diaz thing, he's done. Like he'll be there for another 3 years, or he'll retire there. But John Jones is different. If you vacate, I don't know how many more fights you have left on your thing. He could fight out his title. He could fight out his contract and bounce out.
Yeah, I think long story short for me, like I guess my overall take on the whole thing is like from a business standpoint alone, just a business standpoint, Lorenzo, Frank, and Dana are geniuses at building business. They built a genius company, and they did, to make their company successful, what every major business that has gotten to that level and higher did to build their business. Now, I think where things change is their business was staffed by staff that turned into celebrities and had media behind them and had voice and had opinions and became superstar celebrity fighters. And I think that's the only difference between someone or a business like the UFC and these other businesses you hear about. And you don't hear the downside because their staff doesn't have the voice that UFC does. And they got there the same way. They built a great business model and then they sold for $4 billion, whatever the case. So it's like kind of like I'm with you, like as far as the fighters, I'm always for the fighters, but I also see things from a business standpoint. So I like getting opinions from people like you and from other people just to hear what other people have to say, because I'm neutral. Like I said, I'm a company guy, but I'm a team guy and I'm a fighter guy. I'm everybody. You know what I mean? I'm just not a controversial guy and a political guy. And, I don't like to get into controversy too deep, but, I just kind of have my stance and see things from all sides. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, with the Jones and with Masvidal and with even Nate and Nick, what they do when they come back and who they fight and how they work that out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I see here. I own a couple businesses. I own 2 gyms. I own a fitness gym. I own a martial arts gym. I own a clothing line. I own all these little. I do a podcast, and this costs money as well. Yep. I understand this. I have employees that work for me in my clothing line warehouse. I have employees that work for me at my gyms. And what they do is they see, the gym's packed. Oh, you must be raking it in. No, you're not. Yep. And I understand the UFC's point of view on this situation. I get it. But when you're talking about, when you look at their profit margins, if I was to actually show my employees, this is what I actually profit every year, they'd be like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. It's different. The UFC, you show what they profit every year. And the fighters would be like, oh, bro, you guys are fucking making it. You guys are buying islands. You guys are doing this. You guys are doing that. I understand the promotion side of it. But when you're talking for a real sport, if you want to be considered the biggest sport in the biggest promotion in the world, which to me, I feel like they are, which they are. And you can't deny that. Like they are the biggest fight promotion right now in the world. But the thing is they are making so much money that the fighters now, because it becomes such public record, fighters now are like, look, why are we not getting a bigger cut of the pie? It's going to become a problem. When you got guys like Henry leaving, you got guys like Masvidal wanting more money, John Jones wanting more money. There was somebody else in that mix that wanted more money as well. I mean, there's a group of guys that want more money, and these are your champions. These are your champions that are arguing with you, if these guys were to take us, GSP never complained about money, but you could always tell that there was something going on with him, that he wasn't comfortable with the sport, and there was reflection between him and Dana, or him and management, or whatever it was. There was something going on. There's something in this mix where fighters, I think, are going to start to get a little bit more hostile, and they're just, may end up seeing, like, this is a classic example. Nate came out and said, like, this is exactly what's wrong with the sport, is you have a guy like Usman, and you have other fighters that want more money to fight for the title, or fight someone, of an upper caliber, but their contract was done 2 years ago, and that money is old now. Like I've made my way up from when I was ranked 11. Now I'm ranked number 3, and I'm fighting the best guys in the world, and I'm still making pennies on the dollar. That's the concern with the 6-fight deal and an 8-fight deal. You know, the problem though is that as a fighter, or not a problem, but the thing with the promotion is they won't start promoting you until you do sign a 6 and 8 fight deal, because they know they've got you hooked on lower money, and now I can catapult you in. And if you do succeed, I'm paying you pennies on the dollar, and you won't be able to renegotiate until you fight out that contract. So I'm going to have you fight the best guys for no money. And then when you lose, I'm going to start saying, hey, well, you lost. I'm going to just, I'm going to pay you this amount of money or less than that. And that's not fair either. That's the thing. When the iron's hot, you got to strike. And I think Masvidal's doing the right thing in his argument. But the problem is you just got paid a ton of money to fight Nate. Yeah. Because it was a draw. Right. You can't turn. Now, if he was to turn and fight Colby Covington, given the animosity and the ATT thing and all that stuff, I honestly had no desire to see him fight Usman. I had none. Yeah. But if he was to fight Colby Covington, I'm sorry, man, but I'm fucking tuning in. Yep. Between Colby and him, that fucking fight right there, I think that fight right there does the same.
I want to see Tyron fight him too.
What's that?
I want to see Tyron fight him too.
Yeah, Colby. Yeah, that's another one. Exactly. Tyron Woodley and him and Colby. But that fight, I think I would tune in every single time to watch that fight, and I would pay my $85, $75 or whatever it is for the pay-per-view. I would pay that money to see that fight. I don't know why they haven't tried to put that fight together. I don't know which side's balking on it, but that's a fight that I want to see. Now, I think that fight has the potential to make more money or do the same amount of numbers, if not more, than the Nate and Masvidal fight. Nate's a huge draw. Colby maybe not being a draw. Maybe he is I think he is a huge draw. It's just a matter of that people want to see him more to lose than they want to see him to win. But that fight to me makes a lot of sense. And the Woodley fight, here's the thing. As much as I like Tyron Woodley, he has a hard time connecting with fans. And I love the guy. He's absolutely fucking probably one of the best guys in the sport. Phenomenal person.
He's an awesome guy.
Great guy. But he has a hard time connecting with fans. He has a hard time connecting with pay-per-view buyers. And so that fight, the Colby and the Woodley fight, I don't think it's going to be a big draw. It won't be as big as the Masvidal and Colby fight. And if Masvidal wants to get paid good money, he needs to try to get that fight. The Usman fight, I don't think people cared. They're like, yeah, I think the Burns and the Usman fight has a little bit more draw to it because they both train at the same gym.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they both train at the same gym. So they were both at
that's right. That's right. I remember that now because I remember when they were talking about Gilbert when he was fighting Woodley, they said that if he got a chance to fight for the title, he would fight Usman. So yeah, I do remember that actually now. But going back really fast, just on what we were talking about just previously, I agree. I think it all comes down to leverage, and I think certain fighters like Conor have proven that with the right leverage, you can get your way with the UFC and get big deals. That I agree with, or I understand. The problem that I think the fighters are unfortunately in right now is, like I said before, the UFC is not the same UFC it was before. So I don't think they can do what they could do before. Obviously, when they were, about to sell for $4 billion, there's probably a hell of a lot of money in their bank accounts. You know what I mean? So if they had to make a fight like Ngannou versus Jones, they probably didn't want to pay a certain amount of money, but they'd be like, fuck it, let's just do it, and we'll get the fight out there. Now I think there's a lot more pressure. So it's like these guys that are gaining leverage like Masvidal, Jones has got major leverage, and some of these other guys, they may have the most leverage ever of any of the guys that's went against the UFC in the past, but they're against a new UFC, a UFC that's not Lorenzo, Frank, and Dana. It's a Dana obviously, but it's a UFC that's owned by WME, and that they purchased for a lot of money. They have to make that money back, and that changes that changes everything. So that's where the UFC can just simply say, we just are not going to do it, and so that's why I said it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But that's the dynamic I think that I want to get across that changed, that I think a lot of people don't understand. I don't think Masvidal has really stopped to think that he's battling against a different UFC, and they may not. I think they're still stuck on the fact when they see a sell like that the company just has so much money. But in reality, the company that they are now lost that much money. They didn't have that much money. The people who took that money are Frank and Lorenzo, who are not a part of the UFC anymore, and Dana as the president when they made that sell.
Well, that's not really true either. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because the new UFC, the people that own the UFC now, paid Masvidal a lot of money to fight Nate Diaz. So that's why he thinks he can continue to get that money. What he doesn't know, or maybe he does know and just doesn't give a shit or doesn't care, is that the company that did buy the UFC, they ended up buying a bunch of other live event stuff like concerts and live venue stuff. Guess what? No live events are going on until 2021.
They got fucked.
Where fans will be in and crowds and concerts and all that stuff. It's just not happening.
Right.
Worldwide, it's not happening. And so the fact that all that is not happening worldwide, that's why this company, the UFC, who is owned by this bigger company that put all this money in banking, and the fact that they like companies like Stagecoach, what's the other one, Coachella, EDC, all those type of events that bring in crowds and bring in money and bring in all these dollars and all these revenue dollars, they're non-existent right now.
Right.
And so that's what they were banking on to feed all their other outlets money. Well, those things are not making money right now. They won't be making any money until next year. And so the fact that they actually took out some astronomical amount of loan just recently just to pay the monthly payments on their $4.4 billion purchase of the UFC, that lets you know that they're struggling a little bit. And I wouldn't say they're going to go away. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But I do understand on why they're not paying these guys more money, because they are financially, they are hurting. I think
that was just my point.
Having to fight these guys because they're under contract and you have to fight them in a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you have to pay them for no fights.
And what do you think about the fact that I think that also there is some – I heard some fans backlash on it a little bit that had not necessarily the UFC side, but I guess just the side of the situation. But a lot of this came out post-COVID. So it's like when people are losing their jobs, not making money, losing their businesses, and everything's going to shit financially. This is kind of when Jones and Masvidal came out and all of a sudden demanded all this much more money. And I think that may have left a sour taste in certain people's minds, just because it's like, look, I lost my business. You're trying to get more money now. It's like, you got to understand, everybody loses money because of this thing now. Everyone's going to have to make a little bit less money until we recover and get back on our feet. And now you're demanding, much more than you've ever made before the COVID. So I think that also has a little bit to play in there as well, in my opinion. I don't know. Like, there's just a lot of factors to think about.
Big John McCarthy and I talked about this as well, and I do see your point, but like I said, in the free market industry, and it's very unfortunate, but like if the UFC was to fold, there's other promotions that will pick it up, and there'll be other promotions that will start. Sure, maybe they won't have the star power that all comes right off the bat, but it'll eventually happen. Those fighters are going to go somewhere, and to think that like, oh, without the UFC, we won't make it, that's bullshit. These fighters will make it somewhere else, and people will tune in. And to think like, oh, it won't be the same. You're right, it won't be the same. It may end up being worse. It may end up being a lot better. You never know. Like that's the thing. You don't know. We're just guessing what would happen. But if the UFC was to fold, the UFC would fold. And another show and another promotion would step up and try to be the best.
But can those promotions take 500 plus fighters right now? How many fighters are going to be out of work?
But here's the thing. I think promotions like ONE and promotions like Bellator would take the top tier guys. All the other guys that were below would end up going to PFL, and I think other organizations would start up. Okay, I think Ryzen would take a lot of the smaller guys because that's what they bank on, and they would have the smaller guy events. They've got a ton of small athletes there already. ONE would be very similar to that as well. They would try to get a lot of the smaller talent. Bellator and ONE would probably but ONE I think would start to try to build some of the bigger weight classes as well, given that they know they have they have deep pockets somehow, some way. They have deep pockets, and that's the only thing. When you're talking to me about will these guys be able to get paid, I think they will. Now here's the other thing. No one ever said that they had to go there and stay there. Fighters can go there, and if the promotion folds, they fold and they go somewhere else. Right. That's the reality of the free market industry. Like they can figure it out, especially if you have some sort of name. Okay, so when Pride sold to the UFC cherry picked the people that they wanted, and they just let the rest of them go. And then on the back burner of letting the rest of them go, Strikeforce picked them up, and then ended up building one of the biggest heavyweight divisions in the world. At the time. Yeah. So when you're talking about in terms of like these guys will find places to go, and that relationship that they built when the Pride guys left, Karatanov ended up coming. He was in Strikeforce, and now he's in Bellator. Like, the relationships they build along the way will eventually follow them wherever they go. And then when you look at me, I fought in Strikeforce, fought in Pride, fought in Dream, fought back in the UFC, and now I fought for Bellator, and I worked for one. My relationships have developed me to get to certain places all around the world. So it really just comes down to the top guys that will always find a place to go. The promotions will find money for them. It will happen. And you got to think, though, too, if they go, that means that whoever was their fans, those people will end up following them to whatever promotion they go to. Because all of a sudden now, their social media will be blown up with, oh, I'm at Bellator, oh, I'm at One, oh, I'm at Ryzen, oh, I'm here. That's what's going to happen. I think Ryzen has a better chance of outgrowing One, only because of the relationship they have with Bellator. Anytime you do cross-promotion fights,
yeah, they do.
You're starting to develop who is the best? Who has the best fighters? That's what fans really want to see. And when you're open to those type of fights, that will eventually lead into a bigger promotion type setting. Mm-hmm. The reason why the UFC doesn't have to do it is because they've been around the longest and they are the bigger promotion. They don't need to do that. Bellator needs to do that right now with Ryzen. Ryzen needs to do it right now with Bellator. Bellator I feel like is a lot bigger than Ryzen, but they also have a great working relationship. Scott Coker and Saki Gabara and the two promotions have a long-lasting relationship from back in the K1 days when Scott Coker used to promote K1 USA and was always around for K1 Japan. The relationships have been there. And so for Bellator and Ryzen working together, I think is going to help catapult the sport into more cross promotions. One, I think, has somehow, some way, they have deep pockets, but they also do they also do their athletes right. They pay them the best they can. If they can't pay them the best they can, they try to get them jobs and teaching jobs, whether it's at Evolve or they find ways to make sure that they can take care of themselves, which is I think it's a great job by One. The UFC, like I said, this whole conversation started with the UFC, and if Bellator could pay, or other promotions could pay John Jones what they want, if they come, they're going to bring the fans with them, whether it's Masvidal, whether it's Nate, whether it's Nick. So maybe their first contract will be what they're making or a little bit less to see what their real draw is when they first come. But I think on that back end, how you remember how you guys used to get like $25,000 bonuses in the back, for this or for that fight, whatever it was, by the UFC. On the back end, I could see things like that happening. Like, hey, tonight the crowd was sold out. We sold out in minutes? We sold out in a week, whatever it is. The viewership was at an all-time high. Here's another here's another $500,000 in the back end, for bringing your fans over, for promoting. Those are things that I think in the beginning you have to work out, but I think that the deals can be definitely done, especially when you're talking about CBS, Showtime, Viacom, and I'm only speaking right now for Bellator because
right. I get it.
that type of unity between those three companies, with CBS, Showtime, and Viacom, they're worth a lot more than the UFC is. A lot more. It's not even a little bit more. It's a lot more.
It's just name recognition, I think, right now. I mean, the UFC is ahead of the curve on that. And obviously the model.
If it does, they've already said that Bellator will eventually go to a CBS and Showtime / Paramount, whatever it is, networking system, CBS Sports. When that all does happen, they're going to be on live TV all the time. It won't be shitty cards. It'll be good cards. Remember how Strikeforce back in the day was on Showtime? It was like all the best fights went there. And what were you paying an extra $10 a month to get all those? We didn't have pay-per-views back then. Strikeforce didn't have pay-per-views. Okay, and now that they're becoming more worldwide, we have a whole UK series, which I'm the head analyst for on that side, and then we have the US series, and then I do know there has been talks of them branching out across the world. I don't know where's next, what is next, but it's out there. It's out there, and there is talks of where they're going to be going next in other countries. So to think that they're not going to grow, with the stars that they have now, it's just absolutely absurd. And if any of those stars did leave the UFC, whether John Jones, Masvidal, Nick, Nate, whatever it is, that's only going to bring more recognition to the Bellator, or to One, or to PFL, or whoever.
Well, we'll see how that pans out. I mean, I'm interested myself to see how this pans out, especially with the shows being put on Yas Island. They've announced some big cards, obviously, or some big fights for that Fight Island thing. But going back to you saying all the organizations you've worked for, first and foremost, man, like, it's cool seeing you and both of us doing well, and you know, after all these years of training together and where we started and kind of like where we were, you know, back in San Jose, working in and out jobs and trying to be fighters and hopefully getting to a point where we're at today. But are you completely done fighting, like 100%? And it may be a silly question. You may have already answered this. I don't know. I don't get a lot of the news. But are you completely done fighting? Is that completely out of the question? And if so, or if not, I guess, what is it that you're looking to do long term? Like, where are you headed? Like, where's your future? What do you want to be doing in 5-10 years from now?
Okay, so to answer your question, the first one, absolutely done fighting.
Yeah,
I have
no
desire to fight at all. I have no desire to go to I go to AK and I just watch these guys get hit and I'm like, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
I have no fucking desire.
I feel you, dude. I'm not sparring anymore.
Yeah, I don't spar anymore.
No way.
I do grapple a lot with my students here at my gym.
Yeah.
I do hold pads for some of the AKA guys, mitts and stuff like that to help them with their stuff. Some of the upcoming guys that are like, you know, on the Dana White Contender Series or whatever that show is. And then I do have some guys that, you know, I train with and work with that are in Bellator as well. They train at AKA. I mean, I work with a lot of young, talented guys also that are in my gym that are trying to get to a bigger show. But it's just, I just do it because I love it. I love seeing what these kids are going through and trying to get to where, you know, to where I was, you know? And so, but no, I walk past the cage now when I work for Bellator. I walk past the cage as an analyst and I hear these guys getting hit and I'm like, I have no desire to do it. There's no excitement for me anymore. There's excitement for me to talk about it. So to go into your next question, my next thing is I want to be an analyst. I want to be an analyst that actually talks more about everything else. I would love to talk about fighting. I love working next to like Jay Glazer and Chael Sonnen when we do at the desk. Mm-hmm. I also love working cage side, working with Big John McCarthy, who is obviously, you know, I have a podcast with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the two of us, we hit it off from day one, you know, and I'd always just known him as a ref. But as we started to work together and we just sat down and had lunch together and sat down and, you know, just talked fights and talked about opponents and who we would like to see match up next, you know, in Bellator and just getting and digging our heels in on like which events and which fighters we would like to work and which events and fighters we'd like to call that fight. We've grown to respect and really love talking and working with each other. Working with Morrow again after the Strikeforce days and Showtime and all that, and back with him now with Bellator, and then being able to work alongside Goldie. Goldie, you know, he always called my fights in the UFC way back when, and also, you know, up until I left the UFC and came over to Bellator, and I thought he was a great fucking addition for Bellator, and I love having Morrow there as well. Morrow to me he'll always be one of my favorites because of the history of Strikeforce and just me and the days that was and this and that. So I love our team. Our team is fucking phenomenal. When you sit down and I'm not just talking about the UFC guys, I'm talking about in general. We have a great group of guys from Jay Glazer. It's just fun to be around. I've known Jay for almost 12, 13 years now. You know, and Chael. You know, Chael is not the person that people see, you know, behind the mic.
He's
Chael's not the person you see, you know, until you meet and sit down with Chael and have a cup of coffee with him. He doesn't drink. So it's like if you sit down and have a cup of coffee with him or you sit down and have breakfast with him, fucking phenomenal guy, just a wonderful person, just a wonderful person to heart. And Big John is absolutely the same thing, you know. And so our production team and our group of people that work for Bellator, and I'm not even into the fight side of those guys, you know, whether it's Scott Coker, Rich Chow, Mike Kogan, Cariana, all that group of people, you know, Victoria Gracie, Jordan, and those guys, everybody that works for Bellator to me is like it's a little bit of the old Strikeforce reunion, with a little bit of new flair and flavor with Chael and Jay and, you know, Goldie and Big John, but it's fucking fun, man.
Yeah, of course.
I love it. I said when I retired, I wanted to have something else to do, and the gym was taking up all my time, and I loved it, and I love being in the gym, and I still love it to this day. But I knew it wasn't my end game. My end game, I wasn't going to be happy until I was doing something like this, where I'm an analyst. And I absolutely love it, man. I love seeing these young kids, 21, 22 years old, living their dreams and being successful at it. It's so fun. There's this young kid out of Sweden. Is it Sweden? I think it is Sweden. Oliver Enkamp. Sweden or Denmark? I think it's Sweden. Just fun to watch, man. Like, I got kind of a little bit of a Taekwondo style stand up. Good grappler, long and lanky. Just fun to watch. You have good guys. And then you have guys like Patricio Pitbull, who to me is probably the most underrated fighter in the whole sport. Yeah, and I feel, and people are going to criticize me all day long, call me a homer, this and that, but the kid's so damn good. And if you don't think so, talk to Henry Cejudo about how good he is. You know, everyone thinks Henry Cejudo is really good. Well, ask Henry how good Patricio is, and how good they've made each other. They're fucking great, man. They're great. The two of those guys. And, and a lot of the other guys that are on that roster, guys that are up and coming in Bellator. Costello Van Steenis, Fabian Edwards, Leon Edwards' brother.
Yeah.
Fucking those two guys just so happen to fight in the same weight class, but those two guys are future stars. Yeah. Just absolutely phenomenal star. They're going to be stars. Van Steenis trains with Musasi. Leon, Fabian trains with his brother Leon and some of the other guys. MVP's already a star. Just need to get him more busy, more active, and also up his caliber of guys. Don't get me wrong. He has fought some guys that were not to the upper echelon, but a lot of guys don't want to fight him. Just being honest. Yeah. It's hard to get fights for guys that don't want to fight him. And the guys that we did get that were good, he made them look horrible. So they're like, oh, those guys are old. They're all washed up. I'm sorry, man, but anytime someone breaks your skull, you're good. You're like, if I break your skull, I'm going to be considered really good. And he does that. And so there's a lot of good guys. And I'm not even mentioning like Patchy Mix, that kid he trains out of Greg Jackson's. Stud, man. Just a stud. Just takes people back and just can't get them off. I mean, Juan Archuleta. We've got so many good guys. You know, the Jimmy Show. We got Strabanimal. You know, you got James Gallagher. He's good as well. Ricky Mendejas, really good. Our 135-pound division is stacked as well. We've got young, talented guys, and that's what it's going to take to build stars. Mm-hmm. Coker does this. When he had Strikeforce, he did this as well. He had some fights that looked like they were show fights. You know, we had the Ken Shamrock Hoist fight. We had the Kimbo Ken fight. You know, we had Data 5000 and Kimbo. We had fights like that, you know, in the beginning to get eyeballs on us. Mm-hmm. Now those fights, if you notice, have gone away. Right. You know, they're gone. And now, because the younger talented guys like MVP were able to fight on some of those cards, it's bringing name recognition and notoriety to those guys, and that's all those older fights were meant for, was to bring notoriety to the young talented guys that are on the card. I'm a product of that exact layout and that exact format of how Coker does it, and now he's just banking on the guys that we have to continue to build their stardom, and I think they will. I think they're going to put on great fights, and they're going to fight their asses off. And especially when they get onto the CBS or Showtime network and they become like household names, it's just going to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're going to see the best fights. I really believe Bellator will have the most exciting fights out of any promotion coming within the next year.
It's cool, man. And you're doing all these things and then your podcast, bro. Like, dude, good job on the podcast, man. I've been following since the beginning. Yeah. And you started a little bit before me, and then I had like this crazy long break, man. It was like 9 months I didn't do a single episode, dude. We were so swamped, and finally we got the workflow, and I got enough staff that we can keep this thing going. I've been doing a ton lately, but good job on your podcast, bro. And so you've built that thing so much. I'm looking at the views now and the comments and the podcast itself. It looks like you're having a lot of fun. How is it working with Big John, and how is it doing the podcast with him? Y'all are a great dynamic. Obviously, it shows. Big John is pushing 75 years old. And, what? Whoa, stop. Wait a minute. But how old is he really? Because now that you mention that, how old is he really? Because he's been there since like UFC, like what, 1 or 2 or something? He was at UFC 1, but he didn't ref, and he started reffing, I believe, UFC 3. However old he is. But he was still working behind the scenes at UFC 1, helping do the rules, helping do whatever it was that they needed to help him do. And so, but he's phenomenal. You want to know why he's phenomenal? He's a walking book of knowledge. He's got his mind is just I can't believe he can still remember shit. For me, I get hit a lot, and I haven't hit a lot. I don't remember anything anymore. But
But the other thing is he gives the fans that we have on our show weighing in, which is what I'm wearing now. But he gives the fans a different perspective. He gives them the referee and the promotional history of the sport, which even though I was with the UFC back in 2000, 2001, 2000, all those years, and I was around it, I didn't know what was going on behind the doors.
Right.
I just knew the fight part of it. And I knew the contract negotiation part of it. I knew all those things, dealing with Dana, dealing with Joe, dealing with Sean Shelby. I knew all those things. But guess what? The game has changed, and it's progressively changed, throughout, whether it's Bellator, whether it's UFC, whether it's ONE. But I've worked for all these organizations at some point in time. I fought for the UFC, fought for Pride, fought for Strikeforce, fought for Dream, worked for ONE FC as a commentator, worked for Bellator. Now I work for Bellator as a commentary, doing analyst work. So I've been around in every organization and seen how it all works. It's fun, man. It's great. But working with him has definitely been eye-opening, because some of the history from when the sport started, he's definitely got into and talked to me about, and that's a lot of the conversations that I told you about, like how we became close friends, sitting down, having breakfast together at events that we're working shows, and just picking his brain, wanted to know what he thinks, and we definitely have a lot of different opinions, on things, whether it's fights, whether it's, stars and athletes and celebrities and all that stuff, politics. We have our different views on things. But the one thing that we can do, which is what I would love for everyone else to do, is to talk about it. You can't get anything solved unless you sit down and have a conversation. Like this, my team wins is bullshit. It's like, if you don't see my way, or, that whole tribalism, my team's better than your team. It's a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. Obviously I am going to favor the Bellator organization because I work for them. But I also see, I feel like today I gave you a very good, unbiased opinion of how Dana is handling things. Yeah. And I have whether I like the guy or not, the one thing I can do is speak knowledgeably about how I feel like he's doing the best he can in those type of things. Big John has said repeatedly, he has sided with Dana, he sided with the UFC several times, but he also understands the fighter point of view as well. And I think he gets a lot of that from talking to guys like myself, talking to other fighters that he's worked with, trained with, all those things. So when he's not closed-minded, he understands and he listens, and that's somebody that I need to be around. The knowledge that he brings, but it also, I bring the young, even though I'm old, I bring the young part of it all too to him. Like, hey, well, I remember this, and he's like, no, it didn't happen that way. Behind the scenes, it happened this way. Yeah, but from my point of view, from the fighter's point of view, it actually happened like this. He's like, oh yeah, I didn't think that way. So we work well together. We have a great producer, Podcast Dave. He's our producer. We give him a name, so people know that we use him, just like Joe Rogan gave Jamie. Yeah. That whole thing. And I think, we have a good little thing that's going right now. Podcast Dave drives me nuts sometimes, and I want to strangle him. But it's like having a little brother you never wanted, and sometimes you gotta be friends with him and play with him, and and encourage him to be who he is. But I love it, man. I love the group that we have right now. We have a good little thing, and the numbers have grown. I think we're growing like 1,000 subscribers a week. It's nice, as of now. And there was a couple weeks in there where we that first week of UFC fights, we grew 6,000 subscribers in 1 week. Yeah. That was insane, man. That first week when UFC first came back with first fights, we grew 6,000 subscribers in that week. It was phenomenal. We had a great time. So we're getting off the ground, man. We haven't even been doing this for a whole year yet. Yeah. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers. So we haven't been doing it for a whole year yet, and we're trying to get up higher. So, it is what it is. We're loving it. We're having a good time, and we'll see where it goes. But I really look at it this way. Like if anyone wants to get into being an analyst, and anyone wants to get into being a commentary or analyst for any sport, whether it's MMA or any other sport, whether you want to do it or not, get a microphone, get a camera, and just talk into the mic, and create your own YouTube channel and just have fun. Yeah. That right there gives you reps to feel comfortable in front of the camera. It feels comfortable to where you put your eyes. It feels comfortable to talk when the camera's focused right on you and what you're going to say and still get your words out. The hardest part you'll have is when someone's in your ear telling you 10, 9, 8, 7, and you're trying to drive your point home and you can't get the words out because someone's counting down in your ear. That's the hardest part. But getting reps on the mic, getting reps in front of a camera. I mean, if you have a desire and you that's something you want to do, whether it's talk about football, baseball, basketball, whatever it is, or MMA, get in front of a mic, start your own little YouTube thing. You don't even have to open up. That's the great thing about YouTube. You don't have to open it up to the public. Just do it for yourself. Do your own videos, and do it that way. I encourage everyone, man, to do it. And people are like, oh, you must be stupid because someone may take your job. Possibly. But if they took my job, it means I wasn't doing a very good job anyways. So maybe I need to go back home and work on my craft and get back at it.
But plus, there's a lot. Every episode you do, every time you do it, you're just that much ahead of the curve. So I mean, you're that much ahead of the next guy. So it's like you're so far ahead. You're making yourself better too, and it's awesome, man. And it's a passion thing too. Like you were saying, your passion is talking. Your passion is, you do a great job, by the way. And your passion is like, commentary, analyst work and stuff like that. And like I'm following my passion. And I think when you follow your passion instead of following what people want you to do, or a lot of guys go to college now and they get degrees and things and they're chasing money and they think, oh, this job makes a lot of money. If they're not passionate about it, they're not going to be successful and they're not going to enjoy their life. There's money and then there's enjoying your life. I know billionaires and millionaires that work 15 hours a day and don't enjoy their lives. They can't even take one day off, more or less fly to Bali for 2 weeks, or do something like that. And I think you found something you're passionate about, as I did in my post-fight career, where I'm over here living a good life, and I enjoy what I'm doing. It's fun and it's exciting and it's rewarding. So it's good to see you doing the same thing, man.
This is one thing, Swick, listen to this. When I was a kid, right? I was 18, 19 years old. I had like 2 or 3 fights. My family found out that I was fighting. And then I moved down to San Jose to train. I want to say I had like 7 or 8 fights when I moved down to San Jose and started training with Frank and started training at AKA and all these things. My family, because I came down here, I was going to college and I was training on the side, at AKA with Frank. My family was like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. This is a waste of you. You're going to get seriously injured. All these things. And I'm like, I just kept doing it. I was wrestling in college and I just kept doing it. I just loved training. I loved being part of the gym. It kept me away from being at the club, kept me away from being stupid and doing dumb things. Yep. I ingrained myself in it. Guess what? By the time I got signed with the UFC, my family didn't even know that I had signed with the UFC. My family didn't even know I was fighting on TV, on pay-per-view. But guess what? One of my cousins was in Vegas on my first UFC fight when I fought Gerald Strebent. And I'm in the back warming up, and he texts me and says, hey, I just saw your name on the flyer out in the casino. Are you fighting? And I said, yeah, I'm fighting here. He's like, holy shit, I'm here right now at the Mandalay Bay. Like, can I come? And I'm like in the back warming up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, I can't get you a ticket, man, unless you can get in. I said, and I fight probably, I want to say I was like the 2nd or 3rd fight on the main card, maybe the 4th or something like that. But anyways, I was later in the pay-per-view, not on the main card, but on the prelims. But I was like 2nd or 3rd fight on the prelims. And he went and bought a ticket and came in and watched. After that, he spread all the knowledge to the rest of the family, saying like, dude, he's fucking good. Like, he's good. He's on TV. Like, people are buying pay-per-views that he's fighting on. That's crazy. Maybe they're not buying them for him, but he's on pay-per-view cards. Like, this is crazy, and he's good. And then I won that fight, and it was almost like the reality was I was hearing from my family for years about how, oh, you're wasting your time. You're going to get hurt. You're going to be broke. You're this. Get a job. Why don't you work for a union? Be a plumber. Be an electrician. I had no desire to do that.
It's passion.
And it's all led me to do this. So if you don't follow the desire that you have on what you want to do, and sometimes you don't know what it is you want to do, but do what you enjoy doing, and that'll lead you in a direction that opens up a bunch of other doors.
Right.
I enjoy talking about fighting. I loved fighting so much that I just dedicated myself to it, and I thought I was pretty good, and I think I lived out to be a pretty good fighter. And now I've talked about fighting because I love fighting so much, and it's progressed into this. I have a podcast now. I'm an analyst now, and think about this. I work for CBS and Showtime. I must be decent at what I'm doing. I must be okay.
You're not bad.
So I love this, man. I love this. And and like I said, with you, I love it. I love the fact that you own this huge AKA out in Thailand. And when you came to me and said, I'm going to open this big gym, then I'm like, man, the gym business is hard. And you're opening this huge square, like this. How big is your place?
2 acres.
50 or 60,000 square feet, the actual facility?
All of them, yeah.
It's enormous, man. That's crazy to me. I'm thinking to myself, there's just no way I could manage a place like that. And you're fucking killing it over there. And when Javier came back after visiting for the first time, he's like, you don't get it. He's like, this place is absolutely amazing. He's like, I wish I had a place like that, you know? And here he is, the owner of AKA itself, saying, man, I wish I had a place like Mike Swick's.
Thanks, man. Great. I appreciate it.
You know, and yeah, I think that you are doing a phenomenal job, you know, and I know it must be hard, like, you know, living in Thailand, like being from here and being back and forth or whatever it is. But I think it's great, man. I think you're doing a great job, and I admire you a lot.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. Same back to you, man. I've always thought you were one of the most technical guys on the team, and you've always been, obviously, you've helped me for my fights and been a big inspiration for me and helped me get ready for a lot of my fights, so I appreciate that. Speaking of Thailand, real fast before we go, when am I going to get you out here? Because I've been asking you for, 7-10 years now? There was, like, the first time I said I'm going to build the gym, and then that took, forever. Dude, do you remember when I was coming back from building the gym, and y'all were like, because I'd be gone. I'd fight, and then I'd be gone. Yeah. And then you'd see me, get ready for a fight, and then I'd be gone. And then, get ready for a fight, and I'd be gone. And then eventually y'all were just like, dude, are you really building a fucking gym? Because I had no photos. I was just failing. You know, I had no progress, no nothing. And y'all, like, I feel like the team didn't believe I was building a gym. I felt like you guys thought I was over here like he's fucking around. And then finally I built the gym and you know, it got up and I was proud to open it up. And I wanted to show you guys. So I've been asking you for like 7 years, when are you going to be able to fly over here? And dude, I got a picture of you fighting Gilbert on the wall. I got you with your belt on the wall. I got like, dude, it's waiting for you, man. Like, when are you gonna come over here and check it out and let me show you Phuket and show you the gym? And
yeah, I definitely got to get over there. I would like to. Obviously, we're gonna have to wait till all this stuff settles down and flights can be taken. But no, I think after probably you said, because I think there was a time I was gonna come. I was gonna come in like a September, and you said no, you should wait till November.
Yeah, you were in Singapore.
And then I ended up getting a fight, and I couldn't make it, and I was like, all right, because I wanted to come out for a while during that time, and I was like, you know what, September would be perfect, this and that. And then you said, no, come in November because that's a better time to come in November to like February or March or something like that.
Yeah, high season.
And I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I'll come there and then. And then I ended up getting a fight like in January in that time or something like that. I was like, I can't go. So I had to stay and focus on that. And then time passed. And then I ended up getting a job being an analyst. And I was like stuck. Yeah. So not stuck, I should say. But I started becoming busy. But now, I mean, like also too, owning a gym myself, owning, you know, a clothing line and doing other things. It's hard, man. It's hard to get away. Otherwise, unfortunately, shit falls apart.
Yeah.
And you know that. That's why
I'm stuck here, bro. And I say stuck the same way you did. I love being here. But it's like when I leave, things don't happen the way they do when I'm here. And I go to the gym every day, you know? So it's like, I know what you're talking about for sure, man. Yeah. It's crazy. But, man, thanks for taking the time out for coming on the podcast. It's great catching up with you. And we haven't talked this extensively in a long time, man. And dude, we spent a lot of time face punching each other. I mean, yes, dude, we spent a lot of time training and grappling and fucking working hard. Yeah. So it's good to see where we're at right now. I'm proud of you, man. I'm happy to see you got a great podcast. I'm happy to see you on the desk doing the commentary and the analyst work. And so good job, man. And I'm just glad that that we're doing stuff. I'm really happy about that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And the same goes to you, my brother.
All right, dude. Take care, and I'll see you.
Take it easy, man. Have a good one.
All right, well, there you have it. Josh Thomson, AK teammate of mine for many, many years, something like 19 years. We've trained alongside each other off and on. Even the latter part of that, I've been over here building this gym in Thailand. But, yeah, it's great catching up with him. I haven't talked to Josh that long for such a long time, and we got into some good debates. We see some things the same, some things different. I think that's really healthy to have these kind of conversations with good friends and get different people's points of view. And hopefully you took from that as well. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to see on the show in the future. If you're on the audio platforms, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, you can subscribe to us there as well. Thank you. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time.